Well, this is good morning and welcome to Centers for Spiritual Living, Texas Hill Country. I am Reverend Beth Warren, the spiritual leader here at CSL, and I will be bringing you the lesson for today. And today I'm going to start the lesson off with a quote. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Now, that's some pretty powerful words, I'd say. Um, do not conform to the pattern of this world, meaning the conditions and the race consciousness and the things that are going on in the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, which means expansive thinking, feeling, being, and doing. So, what page out of the Science of Mind textbook do you suppose this quote comes from? Well, of course, it doesn't. It is from Romans 12, verse 2 of the Judeo-Christian Bible. So, for 28 days, we are engaged in an experiment of doing some significant renewing of our minds. And we're calling it our journey of transformation. 28 days of transformation, and not to it. Not 20 days and then something happens, but 28 days of transformative activity. 28 days of intentionally living in the energy of transformation that creates expansion in the moment, that then provides the platform or foundation for another transformation, and which then provides the platform or the foundation for another transformation, and on and on and on. In addition to our time together each Sunday, this 28-day journey includes transformative daily activities, which you have now been engaged in over this past week. And this past week, you were called to break up the log jam in your life. In other words, anything that was blocking your energy. Break up that which could stand in the way of transformation by creating space. And creating space in your tangible world. And let me tell you, after the meditation that we did last week about clearing space, I have a clean desk in my home office, and interesting how it occurred because I didn't think about the inspiration that we received through the meditation, but I was getting up to look for something, and then I just started straightening up different areas of the desk, and then I'd come back to my computer to finish, and then I'd walk over. But at the end of the morning, what I consider my altar area and the other desk that I hear was all straight and neat. It hasn't been in a long time. So I thought I just had to take a laugh because Spirit was working in such subtle ways. But we were creating space in our inner world through a forgiveness practice, if you remember last week, of self-forgiveness and forgiveness of others, and then by taking steps that go beyond forgiveness, including the steps of love and gratitude. And so an affirmation to confirm this is, through love and gratitude, I am returned to wholeness. And we can say that together. Through love and gratitude, I am returned to wholeness. So the work that we did at home this week was part of what we call the process of transformation. And we used the caterpillar in his cocoon as our metaphor for that process of transformation or metamorphosis, and how we needed to get things out of the way so the metamorphosis can occur. And if the caterpillar had taken a bunch of stuff with him inside the the cocoon, there would have been no space for the transformation to occur. Thus, we must do our work of unjamming the logjam. And so today's time together is entitled The Call of Transformation. And just like the call of the butterfly lives deep within the caterpillar, the call of transformation, something greater, lives deep within each one of us as well. And something is calling you right now. Something is calling you to your next revolution around the spiral of evolution, whether you know it or not. That is what is happening. And today we will explore that a bit. And let me just say this, even though you say your life is perfect the way it is and you're perfectly happy with it, let me ask you this. Is there not some type of longing or desire that you may have? It may be a longing for a quiet day or a desire for a light day, but is there anything that you're not satisfied with or that you're dissatisfied with? Could be a longing, and maybe you want more of of the good that you do have. So there is a calling within each of us to move forward, because your day today, your life today is not what it was even a month ago or a year ago. So realize that all of us have that calling within us to reach that green growing edge of life. And I'm aware that we can get pretty freaked out, uncomfortable, and even upset and angry when we talk about our call. And I believe that, at least in part, the reason we have those reactions is because we think there has to be some huge, big, gigantic thing we are supposed to do in the world. And we get very intimidated by that and think, well, I'm just not worthy and I'm a failure and things of that type. We believe that if we can't figure it out, then we are a failure. Or we fear that we will figure it out, but we won't be able to do it. So then we'll be a failure again. So the entire subject is daunting and depressing. Am I right? And if you've ever felt that, I want to share with you a story of the master teacher Jesus that may help put this in perspective. Jesus was one day in the temple and watching people as they gave their gifts and contributions. And there were those who were bearing great gifts and giving gifts that had very high value in the world. And then there was a widow. And in those days, being a widow was a pretty lowly thing, because widows were considered outcasts and they often had to sell their children to pay their debts. And it was a very difficult way of life. And as Jesus was observing people offering their gifts and contributions in the temple, the widow came to the altar, and it was clear that she had very, very little to give, yet she had several mites in her hand. Now, you're probably thinking that a mite is a bug, and of course it is, but not in this context. It was the smallest amount of money there was. And the widow is said to have taken 2 of these mites and put them on the altar. And Jesus observed that she did it with such heart and such love that he called over his disciples and said, "Look at the others who give in ways the world would say is great. Yet she has given more this day than all of those others added up." So when you listen to and respond to your call, which is a call of transformation, please don't measure it by what the world might say is great, or what your parents might say is great, or what your spouse or friends might say is great, or even what your ego may say is great. But when your call is offered with love and heart, it is great in the way God measures greatness. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You know, I don't usually quote actors or those in the entertainment field, But an individual in that arena said something pretty profound in one of his interviews a few years back. Ashton Kutcher was on the Ellen DeGeneres show and spoke about a speech he gave at the Teen Choice Awards. And he said this: I think so much of what we see in the world today is the sort of propaganda machine around fame and around celebrity. And there are kids that grow up today and think, I want to be famous, instead of what, when I grow up, I want to do something. I want to build something. I want to create something. And he was saying that he thought this was a perfect moment to actually let them know that fame and celebrity are pretty meaningless. Actually, what he said was a kind of crap. He said, fame and celebrity is kind of crap. And that working hard and being thoughtful and generous and smart is a path to a better life. Do something, build something, create something, be thoughtful, be generous. These are the things that make life complete, because these are things that answer the call within you. And there is another scripture I want to share with you this morning. It's Matthew 22:14. You may have heard this before. Many are called, but few are chosen. You heard me right. That is what it says in the King James Version of the Bible. But did you know that in the original Hebrew it said this? Many are called, but few choose to heed the call. Many are called, but few choose to heed the call. Many are called, but few choose to heed the call. Could this be because of what we are talking about right now? We don't think our call is big enough, worthy enough, or significant enough. But I want you to listen to some words from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. If a man is called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep streets even as Michelangelo painted, or Beethoven composed music, or Shakespeare wrote poetry. He should sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth will pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper who did his job well. To help remind us what the call of transformation really is, let's use an acronym. And I use this: creatively aligning with love's leading. Creatively aligning with love's leading. And when we are answering our call, we are creatively aligning with love's leading. This can be the smallest way or in a huge way, it matters not. It is the nature of the infinite to create, and we are the vehicles through which creation happens. And in the very real sense, at the point in the universe where we are, God needs our creativity to do its work. And as a wise person once pointed out, God could not create Antonio Stradivarius violins without Antonio. Or you probably have heard the story of the farmer who was sitting along the side of the road, and when a traveling salesman stopped his car to ask directions, after receiving the directions, the salesman marveled aloud at the beauty of the farm and that stretched out before him. He said the crops were in perfect rows and robust and healthy, and the salesman committed to the farmer, my, you are a blessed man. Look what God has done here. This is just absolutely amazing. To which the farmer replied, yes, it is amazing now, but you should have seen it, the mess it was in when God had it alone. Quantum physicists say that the universe is ever expanding, and so in you there is a call, a pull to a greater expression of you. You can't deny it. It's pulling you or pushing you or urging you, and eventually it will have its way with you. The creative urge is more powerful than any resistance, stronger than any holdback, and more potent than any concern or feeling that you aren't worthy. It loves you and it called you into being. And as we pay attention to the little nudges, to be God's presence, to the creative urge to ever express more of who we are answering the call. And as you incline the mind toward love's presence, you will be aligned with love's impulse in you. Then follow love's leading. And when you say yes to your call, there is no place where love is not. The Persian poet Rumi said this: feel yourself being quietly drawn by the deeper pull of what you truly love. And let me illustrate that by this story. Little Jimmy was born with physical and mentally deficiencies, which he had but he had a great heart and spirit. And his father helped him learn to run. And though he ran in a very awkward way, he loved it. He loved to run. And one day, Jimmy decided he wanted to enter the Special Olympics, which he did. And as he and his father were on their way to Jimmy's first race, the little boy said, I'm going to win this race. Well, his dad worried because he knew the degree of difficulty his son had had in running. And so he said, you know, Jimmy, it doesn't matter whether you win the race. What matters is that you are in it and that you try very, very hard and that you do the best you can do and that you have fun. Jimmy thought that it was all well and good, but he insisted that he was going to win the race. And his father tried again to convince him that winning wasn't the important thing, but Jimmy insisted that he would win. Well, they were at the race and the gun went off and the kids set out. And Jimmy immediately fell behind because he really couldn't run very fast. And he was trying valiantly to catch up when he heard a cry from behind. A little girl, even slower than he, had fallen and had scraped her knee. Well, Jimmy turned around and went back and took the little girl's hand to help her up. And one by one, the other children turned to see what was happening, and they too turned around on the track. And pretty soon, all of the children in the race came back to Jimmy and the girl, where they joined hands and ran to cross the finish line together. And on the way home, Jimmy said proudly, see, Dad, I told you I was going to win. So why does that story touch us? Even though we may have heard it before, because we resonate when we see the call being answered. Creatively aligning with love's leaning. It moves us, it touches us because it is right. So this week's work is to listen to the call. To listen to how you are being invited to creatively align with love's leaning. Most of the week will be spent just listening and being open to the hearing of what you're guided to do. So for now, let's anchor into your divine assignment this week, because we're not called just once for one thing. We are called many times in many ways. So what is the call now at this point in your life? So close your eyes if you like, and let's take a deep breath through the nose and out through the mouth. We are called to a place where the love of God, the power of God, the presence of God makes itself known. How are you being called? Are you called to be the friend, the neighbor, the builder of community, the prayer, the giver? Are you called to be the highest expression of God that you can be? Have you been called for something more than just making it and just getting by? You've been called for a high intent and a holy purpose. And in this moment, give yourself to the calling of something extraordinary in your life. And this week, be conscious of guidance, inspiration, and support. And commit to a high sense of calling. And together we say, and so it is.
Ah,